Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Deep Dive, Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast. RJ, we've got a week of camp now underway, as well as the first preseason game. Maybe could have gone a little bit better, but we'll get into it. It's early. I still have a lot of trust in this new coaching staff, RJ. I can't wait to talk all about them, how all the players have been looking in camp, the young guys as well as the vets, now that we've gotten to see them, the first looks at new free agent acquisitions, Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson. Like, there's just a lot to get into in this podcast. But first, we want to talk about a couple quick things. Of course, got to start thanking our wonderful sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall, for sponsoring the podcast, as they do each and every week. And RJ, got something even a little special to talk about with them.
Yes, we do. So right before we were about to record this podcast, very good timing there. Buddy Justin over at the beer hall sends me a text and says, "Hey, new season, everything's starting up again. Let's do a ticket giveaway." Of course, the beer hall, look, they love running this kind of stuff. They do awesome events, and of course, they give away some tickets to Kraken games every now and again, and of course, doing it through us, sponsoring the podcast. So, how you can get those tickets? So they're giving away 2 tickets to Friday's Kraken Canucks game. That is the very next Kraken home game. So if you want to see the Kraken at Climate Pledge the very next time you can, go on Twitter. There's giveaways being run through Twitter, or I guess X as it is now known. And it'll be the most recent tweet, at least by the time this podcast coming out. And so you can find it on our timeline. You go to the tweet. Simple. All you have to do, follow Queen Anne Beer Hall on Twitter, retweet that tweet, and you are entered to win. So everybody go ahead, do that, show the beer hall some love, and hopefully win some tickets to Friday's game.
Yeah. Oh, I love that we're getting to do another ticket giveaway with Queen Anne Beer Hall. Always so much fun. So definitely everybody go and enter that if you can make it to the game. Also, that's the next Kraken home game, RJ, in the preseason, but not the next Kraken game, as the Kraken are going to be on the road tomorrow. And you and I over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey are going to be doing a live game commentary for that game. And I'm really looking forward to doing our kind of first live game commentary of the season for that preseason game, RJ. It should be a lot of fun.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the big highlights of the season for us, really, is those Patreon live game commentaries where we get to watch the game along with the ECH community, along with the patrons, and we all have a fantastic time. For those who maybe aren't familiar with it already, there's a live chat during the game, and we're all kind of watching the game together, discussing things and talking about what's going on the ice, and also getting into some tangents maybe at the intermission and talking about some fun stuff, and really whatever it is that you want to talk about as well. So really looking forward to that being back, and the season Patreon stuff starting up again. I mean, there's a lot of Kraken related activity for that, and I just can't wait to get started.
Definitely, and that's going to be our first look, or at least it should be, at Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson in a game in Kraken sweaters. I'm looking forward to watching that with everybody over at Patreon. So really excited about that. And then also, RJ, I'm super excited for this first bit of news that we have to cover before we get into all the training camp stuff, getting into the preseason game that we watched last night. Awesome, incredible piece of news dropped this morning. First off, thanks to the Kraken, RJ, because they've cleared all these Mondays for us to record the deep dive. The one day in the training camp schedule that's clear, Monday. Perfect, beautiful, thank you. And then also dropping this awesome piece of news this morning as well. RJ, I won't bear the lead anymore. Get to it.
That's right. So the Kraken are having the Super Skills Showcase again. The Super Skills Showcase, one of our favorite events. We love it. We've talked about it in the past. It's been one of the best days that in Kraken, for Kraken fans anywhere. It's back, and they didn't have it last year. I think they heard the response from everybody, because I know a lot of people were very disappointed they didn't have it last year, and so they brought it back. It'll be earlier in the year than usual. It'll be November 9th at Climate Pledge Arena, starting 1:30 p.m. And I just love this event. They have a skills competition. It includes like a relay race, hardest shot contest, accuracy shooting, breakaway challenge, a 3-on-3 scrimmage to finish everything. It's an awesome event. It's family friendly. You can come and bring the whole family. It's really accessible. This is my favorite thing about it, is that it only costs $15 per person. They announced the ticket prices right now. It's $15 a person, or $12.50 each for a 4-pack. So if you want to bring the family, that's a good way to do it. And Look, games are kind of pricey. We know this about Kraken games, right? It can cost a lot to get into the building and see your players at Climate Pledge Arena, but this is a fantastic opportunity for people who maybe can't afford to get into the building on a regular basis, which I think is probably most people,
Yeah.
right? Given how expensive the tickets are. So this is a fantastic opportunity to go see the Kraken up close, get some lower bowl seats as well, be really close to the action, and just have a really fun day.
And I finally get to go to one. That's I'm super pumped about this. So yes, you could join me if you haven't been before. We can all have a good time at our first one. And if you've been to the previous two, then you already know how great it is. I believe they said tickets are going to go on sale this Thursday at 2 o'clock. I believe.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. So everybody add that to your calendars and make sure you can snag those tickets. RJ, that wasn't the only piece of news from this morning, though. The Kraken announced before we got to recording Deep Dive here. This next piece of news, maybe not as fun and exciting as the last one. Not gonna
Well, it's
lie.
a high bar,
But yeah, yes. But we do have our first kind of cuts from Kraken training camp as several players were sent back down to their major junior organizations as the Canadian Hockey League's kind of getting their season underway and everything. Players that we knew were not going to be making the Kraken roster, aren't quite eligible for Coachella Valley yet. Kind of makes sense on the timing for a lot of these names.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there's really a surprise here with any of these names, and I'll just rattle them off real quick. You got Caden Hamill, Julius Mietinen, Ollie Josephson, Clark Caswell, Caden Price, Tyson Jugnoth, Lucas Dragosivic, Jakub Fivger, Andre Loshko, and Alexi Bernier. So those are the ones being sent back down, all to their junior teams. And yeah, exactly. No surprises with this list of names. And now they get to get started with their junior team's training camp.
Yeah, so it's been fun seeing them all at Kraken training camp, seeing them all through rookie camp before that, how they've been able to do stuff. Some of them even getting into the game last night, get some preseason action. That's exciting. So, wish them luck in their upcoming major junior season, and then we'll see them again probably at Dev Camp the next time in Kraken stuff over at KCI. We'll probably see them at Dev Camp next year, some of them. So looking forward to that, and yeah, just wish them luck.
There were no surprises in this list of names. I don't think any of these names surprised us, right?
Right.
There was one name that maybe surprised me a little bit that was not on that list.
Yes.
And that is Nathan Villeneuve. And we saw him score his first goal in a Kraken sweater at Climate Pledge Arena last night. And I think this is a little bit of a reward for playing so well last night, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's played well kind of all throughout everything, right? At rookie camp, he played well. At the rookie showcase that they had down in LA, he played well through training camp. And then, yes, picking up the lone goal, we can kind of transition over into talking about last night's preseason game. Scored the lone goal for the Kraken and what was a 6-1 loss to the Calgary Flames. Not the most exciting result there, but still plenty of good things to talk about, including that goal that he scored. I do think that there is a little bit of a reward there for him. And also, he's a guy that you can tell people around him they like him. He has fun out there. Everybody seems to have fun when they're playing with him. He does a lot of the good things out there on the ice, all the little things that you'd want a line mate to be doing. He really goes out there and he works hard and he does. And you could see it, I think, even in that preseason game last night, RJ, outside of the goal that he scored, just the way that he kind of shuffled around on lines a little bit, or if there was a line change and he was out there and he was playing with the NHL veterans, he kind of seemed to fit in with them, right? He understood his role, he understood the assignment of when he was happened to be out there on the ice with like a Matty Beniers. But because he plays such a kind of unselfish game, right? He's willing to go into the corners and dig out a puck, and he's got the skill to then make a good pass with it, stuff like that. I feel like, yeah, he's the kind of guy that could hang around a little bit longer in training camp, get those reps in with the vets, get that experience, get rewarded for the performance he had last night and the hard work he's been putting in throughout camp. Because he just kind of seems to fit in with it all.
Yeah, he does. And especially with the kind of game that happened last night, where it did get a little physical, it did get a little chippy. And despite being one of the younger players out there, he just looked like he belonged, and he looked like he kind of thrived in that type of game. I mean, heck, after the game, remember, he was telling us how after he scored his goal, he's like celebrating his first goal in this building and everything. He went over to Dryden Hunt and tried to start a fight to kind of get the momentum on the team side right after the goal and really spark the guys. I mean, Hunt didn't want any of it, but that's just coach, look, coaches, GMs, hockey guys,
Yeah.
they love to see that sort of thing, especially from a player so young there, going after someone quite a bit older. That you don't see that very often. And I think that's one of the reasons he was drafted so high, that where you have a player like that with that kind of edge. I mean, he even mentioned like the Matthew Tkachuk style game. He brought up that player as a comparable, right? Where if they can just be good enough skill wise and production wise to even just hang around at the NHL level at all, they can be super valuable. And we've seen a bit of the finishing from Villeneuve, right? We know he brings that sandpaper, but we're starting to see maybe he can even produce enough to kind of stick at the highest level.
Yeah. So I think he's been one of the big surprises, pleasant surprises at camp so far this year has just been how well he's been playing at, like I said, just all the levels, right? He just seems to up his game based on what they're asking him to do, what the situation he finds himself in. And that's a really impressive quality and trait to have as a hockey player. Not everybody has that, but he certainly does. And, yes, going back to the Matthew Tkachuk thing, you referenced it last night. I think you referenced it. Was it at this past dev camp or even the one before when he was drafted, RJ? I think it might have been last year's dev camp, kind of talking about
well, he was drafted this year.
This year, yeah. Then it was this past draft, this past dev camp. I think I'm confusing him a little bit with Melanson. He's better than Melanson. We'll get into that. Definitely on the prospect chat on definitely the prospect chat on Patreon on Wednesday. Everybody, get ready for that one. But yeah, back at dev camp, that's what he was talking about, right? Like wanting to be kind of like that and everything. So, yeah, I just think he's certainly been one of the guys that all of us have had to kind of, really acknowledge as he's been going through everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was really the biggest bright spot, I think, from the game yesterday, in a game where maybe there weren't too many of them.
Yeah, no, there weren't. And look, a lot of it can, I think, be explained away, right? I maybe not everybody wants that. I don't know. It seemed like everybody was, ready to go for the first game of the preseason, RJ, right? Long summer, it's finally over, and then you kind of get shellacked 6-1. It's not the greatest of times, but so much of that game was it made sense to me, right? The stuff that was going wrong in that game made sense in regards to the fact that it's a new coaching staff that's been working really hard to try to install their systems. They've had 4 days of training camp to do so before that game had to take place. So not a lot of time to really be working on things. And when you're installing systems, you have to, start small and build bigger with them all. And I think what we saw last night was that the Kraken did a lot of the little things right. It was then when there was bigger picture situations that guys kind of got a little bit lost, or they didn't exactly know where to be, or Ty Cartier called it, didn't necessarily trust each other enough to be in certain spots. I don't know that I'm not going to say that he used the wrong word, but I think that it's not so much not trusting each other as kind of just having that innate understanding of I don't have to think about things. I know where this person's going to be, right? Like I know what my role is in this situation. It looked like a lot of times as they were going through certain looks, RJ, and a lot of the looks that we haven't seen them really practice too much just because they haven't had the time to. They've only had like 4 days. It just felt like a lot of it was guys looking at each other like, is that my zone to cover or is that your zone? Like, do you have that or do I have to have that? Right. Which you can't do in a game situation, right? Like you can't afford to hesitate and take that long there. But it's just because they haven't really worked on that stuff. Going back and looking and thinking about those goals that Calgary scored, RJ, they basically all came off of 2 different setups, right? And that was zone entries for Calgary. So kind of back checking into the defensive zone for the Kraken, which I can't think of a time in training camp they'd really worked on that. So kind of understandable that guys didn't really, totally have the big picture idea of where they should be, and off of faceoffs, which again, not really something they've worked on defensively in camp. And so I think those 2 situations, it showed that, look, they don't have the systems down for that. They haven't really had the time to work on those things. Those are later installations that you would work on anyway. And so I think you can kind of explain away some of the issues there just based on that alone.
Right. And especially when you look at the rosters for each team, I know it can be tempting to look and say, okay, well, the Krakens actually had some NHL veterans there. They definitely had a lot more skill than
Yes.
Calgary on paper for that game. And so, in a way, maybe it can be a little worrying to see what the result was there. But I agree with you. I'm not worried about this in the slightest for what it is right now. I'm not worried about the result at all. I think more than anything, it just says how much work they have in front of them, which is not an amount of work that can't be done, but it just highlights it highlights what Dan Bilesma was talking about a couple days ago, really from the start of camp or the first time we got the chance to talk to him. I had the chance to ask him about implementing systems and what the timeline was for that and how long it really takes to kind of get that stuff down. And, Coach Dan, it was kind of funny. He was saying, what did they say? It takes 21 days to build a habit. We got 20 days. Would love to have that extra day, just kind of hinting like, look, you end up a day short, right? You're going to have to kind of keep things on a tight timeline. And also it's been 4 days and that looked like what you would expect from day 4 out of a 20 or 21, if you'd like, day timeline to kind of learn everything. So like you said, it just makes a lot of sense to me what it is that we saw.
Yes. And, he talked about also in that, can teach X's and O's in, say, 7 days. And then the rest of it is building out the habits. And that's something that I know I've talked about in the past when it comes to changing systems, which is that, you can understand it up here, when you're looking at it, when you're watching tape, when the coach is drawing it on the whiteboard, if they're quizzing you in the film room of, hey, where should you be in this scenario? You can know. But when it comes time to playing at game speed, having it just built in and hardwired into you because you don't have time to think about it. You don't have time, like the Kraken did last night, to be looking at each other like, hey, is that your guy or is that my guy? That stuff just has to come through repetition, which is a lot of what Dan Bilesma was saying. And I think that's, we're just going to have to kind of wait to see that all come together. And like I said, to see them also practice different situations. Like yesterday before the game, RJ, in morning skate was the first time that they had practiced any special teams, right? Like they had to go into a game with like 15 minutes worth of special teams work, right? Like that's kind of where the team is at right now, just because of the nature of having a coaching change in the offseason and having a coach come in who's going to run things differently. That is what the Kraken needed. They should not have hired a new coach just to come in and kind of do things the way they were, right? Like that was the problem. It just means that, yes, we're all excited for the season to start. It just means the season's going to kind of feel a little bit long here through the preseason as everything just kind of slowly builds up, as the guys get more and more comfortable with the system, and as the system just get more and more installed.
Right. And I think it's important that we all just kind of prepare ourselves for that and know what that process is, which is a reason that I was eager to have this podcast and be able to talk about it as soon as that game ended, really, or even during that game. I was thinking about it, right, to be able to talk about that. And I'm glad you brought up the distinction that Dan made between what he called habitual tendencies and then the X's and O's systems. And the way that you implement those throughout the 20 days that you have in a training camp, where, like you mentioned, he said, you can kind of teach those X's and O's in about 7 days. But before you can really get in and fully do that, you need to have this groundwork of these habitual tendencies of, these are our work habits. This is how we go about certain situations in a game, ways that aren't necessarily systems based, but almost like, your work ethic, your values based. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the kind of groundwork that is really being worked on and laid down here early on in training camp. Because I think you can't do it the other way around. You have to start implementing some systems early on, obviously, because you have that such limited timeline, but you can't just teach the systems and then kind of build the foundation on top of that. It just doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
So I think that's the kind of thing he's trying to instill right now. You saw it with the guys, even just the skating, right? Getting their legs back underneath them and be like, look, we're going to be a skating team. We're going to be well conditioned. Those who remember the Miracle movie, again, we're not going to might not be the best team. We're going to be the most conditioned, best conditioned team. And it's those kind of things that are really getting underway right now. And, you see results when you have preseason games where things just look a bit disjointed. There were so many moments where, especially among the defensemen, it looked like they were just expecting the other D partner to be somewhere that they weren't. Yeah. And that just takes time.
Yeah, it really does. I was gonna say, kind of sticking with the system stuff. I mean, not to like give away everything that the Kraken are going to be doing this upcoming season and kind of wrecking it all for them, but it's been. I will say this: Dan is installing systems that are basically everything that you and I talked about the Kraken needing last season, right? And the mentality in the offensive zone especially is something that he's bringing in, and some of it is being carried over from Coachella Valley, some of it is not, some of it is new, and you could tell that he's worked with his coaching staff to either tweak things from Coachella Valley or just work on stuff that they know this will work better at an NHL level than at the AHL level. And when I look at it in the offensive zone, RJ, because defensively, based on what we've seen so far, like it's a pretty standard zone defense, like 80% of the teams run. There's not nothing special going on there. It's just going to take time of, understanding coverage assignments and stuff. Important to note that when they had two NHL defensemen on the ice last night, things weren't ever really bad, right? It was when it was like all these pairings of major junior guys with an AHL guy or something like that, where they have like just no experience playing together. That's when things really looked rough against Calgary. Wasn't when Adam Larson and Riker Evans were out there. So I think that there's also that to kind of throw out there. But in the offensive zone, a lot of the stuff that we talked about last season that the Kraken needed to start doing to manufacture more goals, we are seeing them work on here in camp so far, and it's clear that this is going to be the style of offense that they want to run. And by that I mean when they're coming out of a cycle, they want backside or mid-seam plays, right? They want a lot of guys coming down either on the other side of the offensive zone from the puck carrier. If the puck carrier is coming up the wall in a cycle, they want players on the other side of the zone to be coming down and shooting towards the slot, similar to what we saw on the Villeneuve goal from last night, where Oliver Bjorkstrand goes, collects the puck, kind of similar spot to where somebody would be when they kind of reach the apex of their cycle coming up the boards. Bjorkstrand, if you watch that play, he's throwing that pass across the zone before he ever picks his head up. He knows somebody should be there, right? And that's something that they've been working a lot on. That's a lot of the plays that they've been drawing up and kind of what the philosophy that they want to have this year is. And we saw it work great on that one play, and Villeneuve gets the goal and everything. So we're seeing a lot of backside plays there, and then mid-seam plays where if the if the F1 is coming up the boards, and this is really building off a lot of the stuff that we did on Patreon, RJ, the coaching videos. But if the F1's carrying the puck up the boards, reaches the apex of their cycle, they're going to be looking at the near side of the slot to them, kind of that slot adjacent area, right? They're going to be looking towards the edge of that face-off circle and looking for a player to step up and make a play there. And we've seen a lot of that through camp and a lot of that through their drills and a lot of that last night in the preseason game as well. And then, so that's if they're working off of a cycle. If they're working off of the puck being down low, this is where Coachella Valley comes in, because they're running the same behind the net looks that they ran in Coachella Valley, which is to have two players really come down low and get things, very much involved in front of the goaltender's face. This was something that I loved watching with the Firebirds last year, particularly with Shane and Ryan Winterton together. They were so good at this, of one of them going behind the net, collecting the puck, and then getting it up to the other one, who would get a shot while coming down the slot, really like at point blank range. And then the one who made the pass from behind the net would come around and circle around to that same side to be there to try to hammer away at the rebound opportunity that existed. And we saw that several times last night, RJ, particularly with the Shane Wright line with him and Jordan Eberle. That was a lot of what they were doing together. And we saw the other lines attempt it, didn't run it as well, but that's, Shane Wright's run that now for a year and a half, basically, in Coachella Valley. So he knew what was up. But I like that because it's, they want net front presence. They want multiple guys there. They're hammering away at rebounds, taking advantage of that, something the Kraken didn't do a lot of last season that we wanted to see. I like seeing that from them. And then just general offensive zone philosophy of shoot the puck. Having a shoot first mentality has been something that he's talked about. And more importantly, RJ, something the players have told us he's talked about. And that's, I think, a big thing of, as we've been talking to the players in the scrums after each day of training camp, how many of them are saying a lot of the things that we've wanted to hear from the Kraken organization, like as a whole, but it's the players saying like, hey, this is what's being communicated to us. And by them repeating it back to us, we know that it's getting through, right? Because it's not just that like it went in one ear out the other. No, they like internalized it, and here they are talking about it because that's what they are believing and that's what they're about now. And so I'm just happy to see all that kind of stuff kind of going on in the offensive zone, where you're seeing guys go to higher percentage chances in the slot, going down low, getting bodies there to hammer away at rebounds, and then just shooting the puck. Like these are like the three basic things we talked about for like 75 of the 82 games last year, once it was clear that that's what the team needed to be doing, and we're finally seeing it now, RJ.
Right. And we may not be seeing the finished product with it, but we're getting really good indications of that
Mhm.
and what's coming. I mean, how happy we were like that when we were talking with Oliver Bjorkstrand, right? When he did the media scrum. And I just asked him about the power play, basically just how hard is it when you only have 10 minutes to work on the power play before a game kind of thing. And he was talking about the things that are going to be instilled in the power play. So kind of unprompted, like, right. He didn't need to
Mhm.
bring this up. He wasn't asked specifically about this, but he hinted at more player movement coming on the power play. He said they want us to have a little bit more freedom of moving the puck around and not being so focused on being in one specific spot. That is player movement.
Hallelujah.
And hallelujah, exactly. As soon as Oliver walked away and we got the chance to look at each other, we're just like, yes, yes, player movement, let's go. So, these kind of things are coming, and I think they're going to be welcome changes. They're going to be very good changes that should help get the goal scoring going.
Yes, and we saw that too, even in that little bit that they were practicing the player movement on the power play. Shane Wright especially. I remember when he was on the half board spot in front of us, and he literally everybody was moving from the goal line to the blue line just to keep passing lanes across the zone open to himself, right? As the defense would shift, as the puck carrier would change elsewhere in the zone, he was moving that much. He was utilizing the entire half of the ice to make sure that he always had a lane open to himself, so that if somebody could get him the puck, he could go and make a play. And that's just something that was unthinkable last year on the power play for this team. So seeing that was incredible.
Yeah, and you only really saw it when a player got called up from Coachella Valley, if we're kind of
Yes.
being honest here, right? And then pretty soon it would be coached out of them, or just the other players wouldn't really be used to it or know how to get him the puck. So it's good to have a reason to believe that that won't be the case now.
Yes, definitely. So I just so much of it is just been music to my ears going through this whole camp process, RJ, whether it's player movement on the power play, getting guys into higher percentage chances. I mean, these are just all the things that the Kraken really needed to work on from last year to this year, the things that really felt like they would make a difference and help the team win games, is all the stuff that they've really been working on. The other stuff though that seems like the new coaching staff has been bringing in, RJ, beyond the X's and O's standpoint, is just kind of what the organization as a whole has been going for this offseason, which is just kind of a new culture, new attitude. And Dan Bilesma sure brings that, doesn't he, RJ? He certainly brings personality, he brings fun, he brings his own work culture. It's been a ton of fun just watching him out there, RJ, on the ice, quite literally, as he drops down onto his belly sometimes to get down for certain drills to kind of throw, something in the player's way. And that's just something that just it felt unthinkable before, right? And the big takeaway that I've had, RJ, is that it looks like these guys are working harder than they ever have in a Kraken sweater, and yet they're all smiling the whole time. And that's just something that I think has been a major takeaway for me, and I think it's just phenomenal.
Absolutely. And it's fun for us. It's fun for the players. And it all starts from the top, right? Joey Decord talked about there being, he said you can feel a culture shift already. And Jared McCann said he brings a level of energy to our team that I think we were kind of missing. And I think that tells you how the players are feeling about it. And it starts from the top with Dan Bilesma, where he takes the job and takes the work really seriously, but he doesn't take himself too seriously.
Mhm.
If you kind of understand the distinction I'm trying to make here. And I think you see it even when talking with us. And there was a question from Allison asking if he plans to incorporate the AHL coaching staff into the preseason games. And he joked, he said, yeah, we are an AHL coaching staff. I think that's exactly what I'm talking about, where you're not taking yourself too seriously, but you're taking the work really seriously. And it allows the players to kind of have fun doing what they're doing and working as hard as they are. I think it's kind of what Steve Briere did for the goalies when he came in a couple of
Yeah.
years ago. We're starting to see that now, though, for all the skaters and for everyone in camp.
Yeah, and it's been a big takeaway for me. It's just been how obviously all the hard work you mentioned, all the skating drills and stuff that they've been doing. They've really been working on that conditioning. We know that this team wants to be a team that can skate. We've got over that a lot over the course of the offseason. But like I said, just the massive smiles that are on everybody's face as they're doing stuff has just been really, really great to see. And it's not just the players, it's also the coaching staff, right? Like everybody really feels positive about what they're doing. And I just can't help but think how needed that was for them in the room, for the organization, and then certainly also for all the fans that have been attending each day of training camp, just to kind of see that, feel that positivity going into this new season. I mean, you think about the situation that we were all in at the end of last season, how down we all were, the overall attitude towards just the team in general. You're seeing games that were sellouts on paper, but it was obvious that, the crowd wasn't at capacity at CPA. And it very much felt, doom and gloom. And it was like, wow, really, the honeymoon period with this team is officially over. And now it's just everybody's so pumped, everybody's super excited, everybody's 100% bought in again, right? People are taking off work, kids are ditching school to go to training camp. All that kind of stuff is happening again, just like it did way back when the team first arrived. And it's all just because they made this one change, and they picked the right guy when they made that one change.
Right. Culture, it makes all the difference, right? And this is why we were so happy when they made the decision to hire Dan Bilesman, where we felt like that was a really good choice. And that like we said, it should be his job if he wants it. Turns out
Yeah.
he did want it, and this is exactly why we were saying that.
Yes, and I could also say, because I stayed for a public skate one day after training camp, and then we went and grabbed lunch, and then I came back to get the car at KCI, and Jared McCann was kind of walking back to KCI, and stopped and let him cross in front of us in the parking lot. And I was with my girlfriend, and she goes, "Oh, that's just Jared McCann." And I had like looked, and I feel like I had registered that in my mind, but I was like, no, it's not. He looks too happy. Because he just this huge smile on his face, right? Dressed just in normal clothing and everything. But it was just like, wow, I just don't think I've ever seen him look so happy. And that's just awesome to see, and to know that this is kind of carrying over for all the players beyond just the work they're doing on the ice, which we can get back to here, RJ, and we could probably start transitioning to talking about some of the players and some of the stuff that we've been seeing. I don't know. Do you want to talk about individuals? Do you want to talk about line combinations? Where do you kind of want to go? What are you feeling right now, RJ?
I think, let's see. I mean, let's talk about some individuals
Okay.
before because then we get the lines and I think the bigger picture. But I think there are some individuals that we ought to talk about at camp. I mean, I think we should probably start with the two big new arrivals,
Hmm.
Chandler Stevenson and Brandon Montour, because I mean, those are the big changes over the offseason. They're going to be relied upon to make a big change on the ice.
Yeah. So, I mean, Brandon Montour looks fantastic. Boy, his skating, like, it's been a while since I've seen him, because I saw him when he played with the Ducks, which feels like an eternity ago. But boy, I forgot how smooth his skating is, RJ, and just how fast he can move without looking like he's moving at all. But he's just zipping around out there like it's nothing. And the way he can make plays at speed, and more importantly, the way he can make plays that then allow other guys to make plays, if you know what I mean. And I know it's something like you pointed out when he was working with different players who are net front on tipping pucks, right? And how he kind of knows how to put it in just that right spot so that they can do something with it. But just when they've been doing like rush drills, and he's on the back end, and he's got to make a play at speed up to somebody waiting at the blue line to enter the zone, the way it's always put on their stick, that almost like causes that player who's starting from a stop to enter the zone with momentum, right? And just kind of make those plays like that. I don't really entirely know how to describe it, but he puts it just like kind of perfectly so that it's almost like the player receives the puck and it just drags them into the offensive zone, and they're off and going. And just watching him kind of do that, and the fact that he does it each and every single practice rep, I'm just so excited to be able to watch him play now, RJ, at full game speed in a game situation. I just think he's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I think Kraken fans are going to love what they see when they finally get the chance to see him in a game type situation. I know exactly what you're talking about, though, with the way that he leads players with passes and kind of puts them in a direction. And I feel the same about what I pointed out, where with his point shots being so tippable. I don't know how to describe what a really tippable point shot. It just kind of flutters a certain way
Yeah,
that just even if you've like played at a much lower level like I have, you just kind of see like, okay, yeah, you can tip that easily, right? And you could see it with how the players were tipping it in those drills too. But yeah, I love what I've seen from Montour, absolutely as advertised, on the ice and then off the ice as well. He was really fun to talk to when we had him for media availability. He's got that big personality. He's good at keeping things light, and I think we just talked about how everything's kind of fun again, and the culture is lighter like that. I think having Montour around is a big part of that. That's exactly the type of player that he is. I mean, he's already tried to take over as the locker room DJ as well. So I think that's going to be helpful for guys. He was talking about his process with that too, trying to keep everybody happy. He's like, well, you got some guys that like country, some guys that like rock, some like hip hop. He's like, then you've got the Europeans, you know. So he's just a funny guy to hear from, and I think he's going to be great in the room right away. um and so you're really seeing the impact that he has, and I guess my overall thought on him through the first week or so of training camp is, yeah, I mean, I can see why a team would go and give a 7-year contract with big money to this guy, because if you can get the chance to get someone like this in your organization, in your room, yeah, maybe you don't think about the age toward the end of the contract. You get someone like this as part of your culture right now.
exactly. And I think that he's just been a very welcome addition. All the
Ooh, one
stuff you
more
were just talking
thing.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to talk about too. When they were doing the bag skates, like skating the ladders back and forth, and that is, that's tough on the conditioning, right? Keep in mind, this is a guy who had a very short summer. Like he won the Stanley Cup. He didn't have the chance maybe to work out and train as much as some of these other guys did. He was multiple strides ahead of everybody else when he was doing his reps for that. So still kept himself in fantastic shape, even with the party of a summer I'm sure he had.
Yeah. No, he's like I said, his skating it's always been special, and his ability to make plays while moving because of what he can do on his skates has always been great to see. And yeah, all the defensemen, by the way, killed it in those ladder drills. Like every time, every group, you could just say like defenseman. Like if you were to take bets, if you just bet on the defenseman, you'd win basically every single time. But he did look special even amongst the defensive group there. Chandler Stevenson, RJ, I'm really interested to see him in a game setting, right? Because a lot of the work that the forwards have been doing has been building that foundation and building those habits and building all of that kind of stuff that we talked about earlier that Dan has really been working on, and just working through the process of installing all of the systems and everything. So it's been a little bit harder with some of the forwards to just kind of get a read on them. And I feel like Chandler Stevenson, kind of more so than any of the others, when it comes to that. Like, I want to have an opinion because he is the big new free agent acquisition, the kind of controversial contract, all that kind of stuff. But I just feel like we really need to see him in game situations before I'd be able to talk about him too much.
Right. And he hasn't stood out to me as much as maybe some other players early on through training camp. But the times where he has looked best to me were during that scrimmage that they did. They
Hmm.
did a little 5-on-5 scrimmage, just a couple 20-minute periods. And those were his highlights of camp for me, working on a line with Jaden Schwartz and with Andre Burakovsky and seeing the chemistry those three generated. I don't think any of their chances end up going in the net, but they had 3 or 4 grade A
Hmm.
chances that Nicholas Koko happened to stop. And so seeing him in that's not fully a game situation, it's just a scrimmage, right? But it's the closest thing that we've had, the chance to see him in to a game. And so that is making me want to see him kind of more in that game situation. I feel like he's just one of those better game players than he is a practice
Yeah.
player, which might even explain, like, you look at his career trajectory, right? I mean, he wasn't that high of a draft pick. He was
Hmm.
traded for very little to Vegas. Where, yeah, maybe he's a guy who, if he's not getting big minutes, just, oh, well, in practice, he's not really looking that exceptional. But then you put him in a big role like Vegas did, and he's able to do some great things.
Well, and you think about the things that make him special as a player, right? All of the stuff that people talk about with him. First and foremost, his passing, right? everybody passes as well as you basically need to in a drill, right? Like there's nothing exceptional about passing in a drill, right? You notice when it's really bad, when a guy's really off, but otherwise guys are standing still passing to somebody who's largely standing still. The passes go where they need to go. So if that's your best attribute, yeah, in a practice type setting, you're not going to kind of jump off the page at anybody. But then you get into a game situation and you're talking about needing to lead a guy or hit a guy right where his stick blade is instead of in his skates, or threading a needle through defenders, stuff like that. And all of a sudden, passing's not so easy. And the guys that are truly special at it get to showcase that they are truly special at it. And it is a highly valuable skill in that situation, in the way that in a drill, in practice, nobody's thinking about passing all that much, right? Like it's just not something you worry about. But in a game, if you're able to make those big time passes the way he was in that scrimmage, you notice it. And I think that that's kind of the situation with him, is just that, yeah, a lot of his skills are the skills that don't really matter come drills and practice, but when it comes time for the game, he's going to be able to show up and he's going to be able to do something.
Yeah, exactly. So who should we talk about next?
Well, let's talk about some other people who had some big news over the offseason, right? Because the Kraken, they obviously brought in Montour and Chandler Stevenson, signed them as free agents, but they also had some re-signings, right? Let's start with defensemen first, and let's talk about Adam Larsson. We haven't really even on this podcast totally talked about the Adam Larsson extension, but Adam Larsson has been extended. He's going to be here for a nice long time. I'm very excited about it, obviously. Um, he's looked really good in this camp. I don't know this for a fact or anything, but he looks like a little bit thinner, and he just looks a lot more lively out there on the ice. He's always got a big smile on his face. He looks very comfortable. He's running drills at very quick, fast speed, which is not something you usually think about for a big minute munching defensive defenseman. Even something that I thought about with him, he just looks like he has been completely rejuvenated over the course of this offseason, RJ.
I will agree with you on that. And I remember during the skating drills, we were pointing out Brandon Montour and how well he was doing. Well, the next heat involved Adam Larsson. And before it even started, you said, like, hey, well, I want to bet Adam Larsson's going to finish the best in this heat. Sure enough, he did, repaying your confidence for sure. And yeah, he's looked great in camp. And he did play in that first preseason game last night. And I think it is worth mentioning. Adam Larsson, 6-1 loss. He was not out there for a single one of these 6 goals against. And you know what? He was on the ice for the 1 goal they scored. He was the only player, Kraken player, who was a +1 in that game. So in his 21 minutes of ice time, the results were pretty good for Adam Larsson there. So I think it's not really results you can hold against him. And then do we want to talk about the contract and everything? We haven't really had the chance to talk about it a bunch. I know that's more my type of thing is talking about the contract. But so Adam Larsson did sign an extension, and this news came a couple weeks ago.
Like 2 weeks ago,
yeah, 2 weeks ago. But it is a big deal for the Kraken, right? I mean, he's a big part of their blue line, and with his contract previously ending at the end of this year, they needed an answer on him, either move him or re-sign him. They choose to do the latter, and it's a 4-year deal, $5.25 million cap hit, which is, I think, just about the market rate for a player like him. I think it pretty much just matches the market rate. So there's not a whole lot to say about that necessarily. There may be some questions about the age and how the contract will age, given that it expires when he's 36. So you're kind of getting those 32 to 36 seasons. But I think Larsson is going to age better than maybe some other defensemen his age on a contract like this, because he plays a more defensive style of game. And you look at aging curves, and defense tends to hold up better than offensive production. So any kind of offensive production might really start to decline, but that's never been his game. You don't rely on Adam Larsson for offensive production. So I'm a little less worried about this deal than other deals. I think still by the end of it, it might prove to be a bad value the last year or two. I guess I'm just generally okay with the deal. My one concern, if I can be a little nitpicky on this, is okay, should I not?
No, go for it. You have to now.
I guess I do. Yeah, I've brought it up, so that is the rule. It's a market value deal, and I feel like on a contract like this where he's signing a year in advance, right? He's somebody who clearly loves playing here. And again, nothing against Larson, like get your bag, do what you need to do. I just feel like these deals tend to sometimes be hometown discounts, and especially in a no income tax state. And this is not anything about Larson, but just, Francis and some of the deals that have been signed recently where I feel like they're not, I don't know. So some teams tend to get a little more of a discount on these deals, and I feel like they didn't get one here.
Yeah, we have talked about that over the course of a lot of the deals that they've done and free agency and stuff. And yes, it does feel like a lot of the, certainly the Canadian fan bases love to bring up when players sign in Florida, Texas, with Nashville, even in Tennessee, right? All of these places that have no state income tax. They make a big stink about it. We've heard some players talk about it in the past. Doesn't really ever get mentioned with the Seattle Kraken, even though they have that kind of same quote unquote advantage. And I think that is something, worth talking about. I look at this deal, I don't know, it's a pretty modest increase from what he was making that seems fairly in line with the with the rise of the salary cap from when he signed this first deal with the Kraken. Like, I don't know, percentage of the cap wise, in another year or two, it's going to basically be what it was when he signed originally with the Kraken, right? So it feels like it's just kind of in line with things. I don't know. It feels like, I think on the open market, he probably could have gotten a number that started with a 6.
You think so? I don't think on a 4-year deal. I think maybe on a
Maybe not
3-year
on a
deal, he
4-year
certainly
deal.
could have.
Yeah.
That's the thing is it felt like they, I don't want to say gave in, but they paid market value money and they gave that extra year, which I know is a big deal for a player that age. I mean, you saw
Yeah.
it with like different player, different situation, but like I think of Jonathan Marchessault in Vegas where they just would not go a 4th year
Mhm.
because, take him to 36 or 37 and they were just drew a hard line on that.
Right.
Whereas I think in a negotiation like this, I'm sure the player is asking for 4 years and the team would probably rather do 3.
Right. Well, and again, if you want to be critical and kind of go with that big picture outlook and everything, you can say that a lot of the stuff that happened, particularly this offseason, the Kraken were kind of backed into a corner that they backed themselves into, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like they backed themselves into a corner where they did not have the luxury of operating from, quote unquote, like best practices for dealing with that kind of stuff, right? Like that is kind of the reality here. But I think on the looking at it from a more optimistic standpoint, I'm with you. This should age like pretty well. Adam Larson's a guy that, if in 2-3 years he can't handle 24 minutes a night, 23 minutes a night the way he has been, he's the kind of player that you can slowly start working back his minutes, but he's going to continue to kind of give you that same value. It's just that he can't give you that value as much as he did before, but he'll be able to kind of play his same game, provide those same things for you. And then also I wonder with this one how important it was for them to keep somebody who did have an A on their sweater on the back end in that locker room. Again, given the situation that they found themselves in this offseason, right? He is somebody that all of the defensemen in that room really, really respect and they kind of look to for a lot of things. And I feel like after last season, they really felt like, you know what, if we kind of need to do what we have to keep him around just to have that continuity and to have that leader on the back end for everyone.
Right. And I think that's a factor as well. And so you look at it 2 different ways. I mean, you look at the analytics models and they say that this is going to be a deal that ages quite poorly, whether it's Dom Lucian or Michael Blake McCurdy. I mean, it you see the trend line going down and it's a bad value. But I think a lot of the things that the model doesn't capture, whether it's the whole leadership situation on the team and how necessary he is for that. And also that, I don't know, again, he looks leaner. He looks a little faster. He looks a little better this year. I think last year was just kind of a down year for him. And maybe, I think you even mentioned it like during the game last night, is just theorized maybe possibly that he was kind of trying to play it maybe too heavy of a weight potentially. Again, we don't know any of this stuff. And that it might have caused him to be a half step slower. And it would make sense if he looks faster now.
Right. If you're trying to be more physical or trying to do things, it also could be, he had a nagging injury. right? And
Yeah, it could be
that kind of
something like
stuff,
that we just would never know about.
right, that kind of stuff, inflammation, all that kind of stuff, your body can hold on to water weight and all that kind of stuff. Like, you just have no idea. But he looks like a different guy from last year, in the complete reverse of how he looked like a different guy last year from the first two seasons of the Kraken. In a bad way, he's back to looking like the original Adam Larson. So really happy about that. The other big player who obviously signed the contract, we don't have to go over the money as much, or the term and all that kind of stuff, is Matty Beniers. What have you thought of him so far through camp, RJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been talking about his shot selection a lot. I know that we've been talking through training camp, and this is something I'm going to pay keep a close eye on throughout the preseason, regular season, because that's something we kind of urged him to vary. There have been times where he's gone back to his normal spot that he likes to shoot at, right in the glove, right over the pad. Hasn't worked a ton, but I'm telling you, every time he tries to target a top corner, he just nails it. And I
Yeah.
know he can do it. He's looked good, really tipping pucks net front, which he showed a little bit last season that he can do. Look, the talent is still there. Like, it's so obviously evidently there. Like, he looks every bit as talented as the Calder Trophy winning season that he had, right?
Mhm.
It's just, can he put it all together in the game setting and with the physical stuff too? Because Ron Francis says he's 10 pounds heavier. Probably is. I have no reason to doubt him on that. I just haven't really seen it in the game situation yet where there's enough for me to draw a full conclusion necessarily. If that makes sense.
Yes, I was gonna say, boy, you're starting off with the shot selection thing. You're just a ray of sunshine all of a sudden, RJ. No, it's good. It's fine. I do think, like, with the shot selection thing, I'll start with the negative too, and then I'll work to the positive. I really just am at the point where I fundamentally think, with his shooting mechanics, uh, thinking about when he defaults to his normal shot, selection and placement on the net, RJ, it's always when he's moving, right? It's always when he's moving at full speed anyway. All the times we see him go top shelf, he's like going like half speed or whatever, right? Like, they're doing something and he can do it. I am really starting to wonder, with that kind of, I don't know, uh very upper body heavy wrist shot that he has mechanically. I'm just starting to wonder that if, when he is skating full speed, he can roof it. Like, I just don't know that he can. I just think that that's maybe, or at least that's part of it, or that he can, but it's just not natural to him, right? It isn't his habit. It is not his muscle memory. But I am starting to think that I'm kind of putting it together, that a lot of it comes down to when he is coming in and he's driving down the slot there and he's moving at full speed. That's when he shoots to that spot over and over. And when he's in drills and he's got different looks and they're operating at different speed, that's when we're seeing him do different shots. And so I'm wondering if that's just an element of his mechanics, because he very much leans forward when he shoots a lot, right? Like, he bends at his waist kind of to lean forward, and then he lets his shot go. And I wonder if that just kind of takes a little bit off of it, and it puts him in an awkward spot to kind of get enough of a wrist flick to get it up there. I don't know. That's not my specialty. I'm just
No, that's an
spitballing.
interesting observation, though. I'm going to pay more attention to that next time I watch.
Yes. As for the other thing, yeah, is he heavier? I don't know. He always starts every season heavier, and then he seemingly loses the weight as the season goes on. We'll see if if he's finally old enough for his metabolism to not be like magical. I did, though, notice last night in the preseason game that he did go inside a lot more. And that was a big, heavy Calgary team. And you know what? He was going to the slot. He was playing like a center. It wasn't to the level that Shane Wright did, where Shane Wright almost invites contact as he's coming in, because he's like, hey, if I can establish the contact, then I can dictate its terms and make sure I have inside position. Matty's not doing that. He's not playing like Shane in that way. But Matty Beniers was at least inside. He wasn't trying to be a perimeter player. And to his credit, he was never knocked around. He wasn't boxed out of anything. He was generally able to go where he wanted to go. So I think that that's a positive first step to kind of seeing that evolution from him that he really needed to have if he was going to boost his offensive production.
Right. I did notice he was playing inside a little bit more. It's tough in this game because I feel like a lot of pucks weren't necessarily funneled inside to those
Yes.
areas where he could make a play on him. So I don't know. I'm still feels like incomplete is the answer for me, right? I haven't seen enough to form strong opinions yet.
Yeah. Whereas with him, I'm where I'm at with really the whole team, which is cautiously optimistic, as I've been telling everybody at camp when I've been talking to them. That has very much been my line. Um, I let's talk about the line combos, because then we can kind of touch on everybody, kind of RJ,
Mhm.
as we're basically almost at an hour here and everything, and we can kind of go through things that way. Let's start with the Matty Beniers line. So Matty Beniers has been playing with Oliver Bjorkstrand and Jared McCann. We obviously know the chemistry that Matty Beniers and Jared McCann have together. That is still very clear and obvious, I think. And then Oliver Bjorkstrand is Oliver Bjorkstrand. He can just play with anybody, and he just kind of naturally fills whatever role that line needs him to fill, right? Like, he looks at the other two guys on the line, sees the way they play, and then he's like, well, this line needs somebody who can go and do this, and so I'm going to go and do that. And on this line, it's really, I'm going to be the guy who's going to have to drop below the goal line, dig pucks out of corners, and then make a play to one of these two great playmakers that I have on the line. And I think that that's something that it's going to be interesting to see Matty play with somebody who is as skilled and talented as Bjorkstrand, who is fulfilling that role. Because I feel like Matty hasn't ever really played with somebody like that. It's either been like a straight grinder guy like a Ty Cartier, or he's been playing with like Jared McCann and Jordan Eberle, where neither one of them, they are capable of going into the corners, but they're not going to kind of fully embrace that role the way Oliver Bjorkstrand just kind of throws himself into whatever a line needs him to do.
Right. And that is a bit of a change. Do you remember? Because I remember at the end of last season, Maddie was playing with Bjorkstrand at least for a little bit, because I had it on my projected lineup when I went to go change it, right?
Mm-hmm.
How that ended up looking, because I kind of blocked out a lot of the end of last season. But do you remember any of that?
Me too. And to be honest, even if we were to go back and watch it, I don't know that there'd be that much we could glean from it, just because like everybody was so shaken at that point. Like, nobody was playing with confidence. So I don't know that I would even bother reading too much into it, just because I feel like everybody's playing in a different place, right? Jared McCann especially, like, of those three, like, Jared McCann did not really look like Jared McCann at all by the end of last season. And so I don't know that I'd read too much into it, but I also don't remember off the top of my head. But watching it last night in the preseason game in the new system, and thinking about the new kind of style of offense that they want to play, I think a Bjorkstrand led cycle where Matty's starting to play on the inside a little bit more, and Jared McCann can play on that backside, that to me seems like something that should work.
Right. I mean, well, we saw a blueprint of it a little bit on the Villeneuve goal, right? Where
Right.
Villeneuve was kind of the third guy out there, but that's Bjorkstrand out there kind of making that turn,
Yeah.
throwing that almost no look pass, right, out to Villeneuve. Like, there's no reason that can't be Matty Beniers or Jared McCann in that spot.
Exactly.
He's kind of get lost in that lane.
Exactly. So I'm pretty optimistic about that line. I think that Matty being able to play on the inside a little bit more, and then kick pucks outside to McCann, who's going to be kind of playing on a mid seam look if you're on the inside. That's very intriguing to me. That's something that I am maybe even excited for, RJ. I just think that should work a lot. Is if Matty can kind of go in and clear a lane for Jared McCann, both of their numbers should look a lot better than they did last season.
Yeah, whenever you can get Jared McCann in a position to shoot and kind of have some space, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Anything else from that line you want to talk about?
No, I think that's it. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's do the other line that we've seen in a game situation, and that's Shane Wright's line. And so Shane Wright, and I was talking about this on the Discord earlier, Shane Wright has been out there playing with Ty Cartier and Jordan Eberle. Now, going back to last season, this is something I remember, RJ. Shane Wright and Jordan Eberle do have a fair bit of chemistry between the two of them. And, I know I just talked about Jordan Eberle isn't really a go get it out of the corners kind of guy, but what Jordan Eberle does do really well is play behind the net. And Shane Wright loves a player who can play behind the net, because Shane Wright loves streaking down the slot and then receiving a pass coming at him from behind the net. And again, they had that happen multiple times last night. Shane Wright got multiple good looks. Unfortunately, none of them went in, but you could see that they already had the chemistry together from that little bit of playing last year and the work that they've been doing in camp this year. And it's very similar to the chemistry that Shane Wright had playing with Ryan Winterton in Coachella Valley last year and kind of what they were able to do that I talked about earlier. So I really like the pairing of those two guys together, RJ.
Yeah, they work great, and that's why we've seen them so much already. I mean, just the chemistry is there. The way all three of those guys were really able to work kind of in and around the net last game to generate a lot of really close, just kind of jam at home type chances. None of them really went in, but there were a lot of really good looks, especially in the first period when they kind of had a little bit more juice. Everyone really did before things went off the rails in that game. I'm sorry, is that too negative?
No,
or
go for it.
That's
No, go for
realistic.
it. No, it's
But
true.
yeah, but I mean that's kind of what I saw out of that line is just the ability to play down low. I think Eberle is a very smart, cerebral player, and
Mhm.
Shane Wright is predictable in a good way, in the way that Yanni Gord likes to talk about, right? Where you know
Right.
where he's going to go, you know where how he's going to play, and Eberle I think can read off of that very well. And as far as the go into the corner and grab pucks kind of guy, Ty Cartier, I mean he can win a physical battle in the corner with anybody and kind of help free up those pucks.
Right. Now, this is something, though, that I talked about with Ty Karchik, because I don't know that he's the right fit as the third guy on this line, RJ.
No, you don't
I,
think?
I don't think so, because I think Shane needs somebody who can feed him the puck from behind the net, which we've established Jordan Eberle is. But also watching Shane in this offense, Shane can be his own grinder, right? Like he likes to go into the corner and try to win a physical battle. Like he's very comfortable and confident. All camp, he's looked so dialed in. He's been a leader out there on the ice. Way to bury the lead an hour into the podcast. But by the way,
Oh, that's
everybody,
right.
he has done exactly what we were hoping and we were very much questioning he would do, which is he is out there and he is vocal running drills. He has no problem pointing at a veteran and saying, like, no, you got to do it this way, right? Very similar to what he was doing in Coachella Valley, or at least telling them where to go and what the situation is. And I think when he's playing his confident game, he is, like I said earlier, he's really embraced how strong he is and how broad he is and the ways in which he can win physical battles not by leveling somebody but by truly understanding how to box somebody out. And so what I see from him in Coachella Valley last year and what he's brought that same mentality to here is he'll go into the corner to get the puck out himself. He then wants somebody that he can throw it to in the slot. And I'm wondering, I don't know that Ty Cartier really should be that guy for him, or is that guy.
He was in Coachella Valley, or he
He,
could be.
yeah, he was, but I'm just wondering at the NHL level if maybe him playing with a different, a more skilled guy, or Shane Wright's playing center. If you have somebody who's going to be a little bit more defensively minded, who can hang back in the offensive zone to either receive a pass in the high slot and make a play with it, or cover for the fact that you have your center playing below the goal line, and just know that you're going to need somebody to kind of be back in situations if there is something that happens, your center is going to be tied up. He's not going to be able to get back to help out and transition all that often. Have somebody who maybe is a little bit more skilled in that, where Ty Cartier is just more of like a let him go on the forecheck kind of guy in my mind.
Do you have anyone specific in mind? Because, by the way, caveat on all this line talk too. Dan Bilesman said they're going to try multiple different looks. Like, I think this is a thing every year, but training camp lines are certainly not set in stone. They're just early indications of something that a team wants to try. And doesn't mean they're necessarily going to stick with it. And I'm sure we will see other combinations. Certainly as we get later into the preseason, you have those extra games where it's just mostly NHLers. But given that we'll probably see another look at some point too, do you have anybody else in mind?
I mean, there's the obvious examples of like Bjorkstrand, like I said, he can do everything. You can stick him on any line, something like that. Or we've, the thing we've talked about in the past of Yanni Gord, right? Like that would be a great situation for Yanni Gord, actually, right? Shane Wright's taking a puck out of the corner. Yanni Gord can slide into the slot, go net front, make a play himself, or he's going to be able to cover things on the back end. But how about this one? Eeli Tolvanen. Right? We've seen Eeli Tolvanen always have to take on that role of the heavy forechecker who goes into the corner and tries to establish the cycle. You free up the puck so that somebody else can establish the cycle. But what if you put Eeli Tolvanen in a spot where he can just kind of let it rip with his shot from distance, which we know he can score from distance. And then also he gets to utilize some of that big, heavy physical play that he likes to bring sometimes on the back check instead of the forecheck.
I'm thinking about it.
I know it's one that's a little out there. I know.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right on paper, but Or I guess it does feel right on paper. It just doesn't, like, the vibes don't feel right with it, I guess.
Yeah.
So there might be something. I'll say this much: I would like them to try it.
Right.
This is the time to try it. I would love to see that in a preseason game and see how that looks.
Yeah.
Especially because I think with the lines too, if I don't want to get ahead of ourselves talking about the big picture too much, but there's pretty clear top six and a pretty clear bottom six
Yeah.
with how these lines are configured. And I think that's probably going to be the case this season, or at least as long as Shane Wright is still kind of working up to things. And, we'll see if he breaks out, then, move him into the top six. But for the time being, that's what it is. And yeah, you kind of want to go with another player who is part of that bottom six group. And Tolvanen certainly is at this point.
Yeah. So
Like, you don't want to move a Jared McCann or something into the bottom six.
Right.
That's just not going to work.
Right. So yes, the top six lines that we have seen has been the Matty Beniers line with Bjorkstrand and Jared McCann. The other one, which we can transition to talk about now, is Chandler Stevenson centering Jaden Schwartz and Andre Burakovsky. You mentioned that earlier. That line, it feels like the one that could get broken up the easiest, personally. Like, and maybe that's because we haven't seen it in a game situation, but it very much feels like, okay, this is they're running it like it is going to be part of their top six. You want it to really kind of be humming the way the Matty line has looked in a lot of situations through camp. And I think Jaden Schwartz kind of plays with anybody by being that net front role and doing his thing. He kind of fits in with everybody. Maybe we just need to see it a little bit more. I know they played together back in Washington, but it just feels like the same old with Andre Burakovsky. I'm just like, is this a fit? Does he work well with Stevenson? Like, where is he going to go? Like, how is this going to develop? And that's where I'm at with this line is I still feel like I need to see more out of Stevenson just in general. And then also I'm just like, here's Berkey kind of doing his thing again.
I don't know. I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, just based on a small sample size of not even a real game situation. But from that scrimmage, like, look, Schwartz plays with everybody. I could see him getting moved off that line, no problem. And really, I think the way a lot of coaches approach it is just you have your pairs of players and you have a third on that line, right? I want to see more of Stevenson and Burakovsky. I felt like, at least in that scrimmage situation, this is all we have to go off of. It felt like Stevenson unlocked a lot of what Burakovsky is good at and what he was trying to do. They had a lot of really good chances where, and maybe not so much when they're already in the offensive zone, because there was kind of a lot of circling around and there wasn't really the proper, I feel like, finisher to play off of Burakovsky's creativity in the offensive zone. But in transition, moving the puck up the ice quick, that line felt so fast. And their best chances were all off the rush, where they were able to kind of move in quickly, know exactly what they were going to do, and take advantage of the speed that Stevenson and Burakovsky both have. I want to see more of that. That seemed really, like, enticing to me as something you could have in the top six. So I'm going to stick with the Stevenson and Burakovsky pairing together for now. I want to see it in a game. I want to see how it works, but I am cautiously optimistic with that.
All right. I'm excited for that. I can get down with that. And then the last line has been Yanni Gourde centering Brandon Tanev and Eeli Tolvanen. And that sure seems like a fourth line.
Yep. That's a fourth line. I mean, it's got some players who are more skilled or certainly higher paid than
you would expect. It's a good fourth line to have.
Yeah, it's a good fourth line to have. I don't know how sustainable it is on multiple fronts, really.
Yes.
One, because you're going to have to trade somebody. And I think one of those three guys is probably gone before the regular season starts. And then two, because looking at everything else, I still don't see, we've had this conversation before, but I don't know how you just keep Yanni Gourde as your fourth line center. That feels like a waste of a better player than that.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's why, like, maybe he ends up on Shane's wing, or he's odd man out. It does feel, and we did talk about it, right? Like, that is the group that they've had together. They've been operating, separate from everybody else in a lot of ways. And it just feels like, one of these guys is not going to be here come the start of the season or a couple weeks into the season. And this is the general reality that we've talked about the last couple podcasts, which is the Kraken are, if they want to have a full roster, over the cap. If they want to have healthy scratch players, have that flexibility, have that insurance of having some guys around in case somebody gets injured, they are over the cap right now. They have to make a move in order to have that flexibility that, every team basically wants to have. So we know that something is coming. I'm with you. Those are the three guys that seem the most obvious to be on the trade block. Yanni Gord and Brandon Tanev, last years of their contracts. Makes sense to have them be on that spot. And then Eli Tolvanen, you just re-signed him, but he was an RFA. So to trade somebody who just re-signed as an RFA is not totally out of the question. And hey, if you're looking at him getting fourth line minutes right now, but he's the guy that's going to give you the best return because teams are excited about a young player who, in their situation can maybe play more minutes, I think you got to look at that if you're Ron, right? The other guys are just giving you rental style returns. It's not super exciting. You're basically doing it just because you have to. But all of a sudden, somebody maybe wants to pay for an Eli Tolvanen who can be like a 20-goal guy. He's only 25, low cost with multiple years on that contract. I think it would make sense for Ron Francis to listen to that phone call.
Right. If you get an offer that's really good value, that something that kind of knocks your socks off, I think that's okay to go for that. I'd still lean toward Tanev, even if it's just a cap dump, but that's
yes.
just me.
No, obviously, I'm very much with you. I'm just thinking Eli Tolvanen right now is probably looking down the barrel of 10 minutes a night, maybe more because he'll be on a power play unit. But that doesn't feel like the best use of his talent here.
No,
you know what I
definitely
mean?
not.
So I could see a situation where you'd be open to that if he's going to get you a substantially stronger return than a late round pick if somebody's willing to absorb all of Tanev's contract. Right? I could see that being a situation. Just want to prepare people on the off chance it happens. Defensively, Vince Dunn and Adam Larson have been together. Like we said earlier, Adam Larson looks so much better than he did last year. Vince Dunn looks like Vince Dunn. They're fine. Nothing to talk about there. Montour Alexiak has been the second deep pairing. Haven't seen them too much together in a lot of things, right? We kind of got them a little bit in that scrimmage. I'm more so kind of holding out and waiting for a preseason game or two before I kind of make any judgments of how their styles mesh together. But I will say, I think that it's a good pairing for both of them in the sense that Montour has somebody who can be a solid stay-at-home defenseman, frees him up to go off and do his offensive thing. And if you're Alexiak, I feel like playing with a guy who is such a strong skater and mover of the puck really allows him to focus on things kind of staying at home in a way that he was pseudo still trying to move the puck when he was paired with Borgen because they were both kind of like, oh, they can move the puck, they can stay at home, they can kind of do what I mean? But now it's like, no, he has a very much defined, clear role, and I think that's going to help him out a lot.
Yeah, we've yet to see how it looks in real life, but man, on paper, that just looks perfect, right?
Yes.
Jamie Alexiak, the big stay-at-home shot blocker, defensive defenseman, and Brandon Montour, who is an excellent puck mover. It just makes all the sense in the world on paper. And those are the two guys that you want playing big minutes for you anyway on a second pair that, could even rival the minutes of a first pair some nights.
Definitely. Will Borgen and Riker Evans. I mean,
Who's left?
They're who's left, and they're going to be a pairing together. Look, it's kind of similar in the sense that I feel like because Riker Evans is such a good mover of the puck, player of the puck, offensive guy, Will Borgen is going to be able just to kind of zero in and focus on just having to play defense. And I got to think that that's going to help him just because, again, you're not trying to worry about two plates spinning. You only have to deal with one. And that's just easier on everybody, and it makes you that much better at keeping that plate going.
Yeah, I think he can do the offensive side of the game. He can move the puck decently well, but you're right. Maybe it's better if he doesn't have to focus so much on it because it's really necessary. I mean, looking at these D pairs in general, though, you have three on paper, like perfectly balanced D pairs where you have a puck mover, you've got a stay-at-home guy on every single pair. This feels like the prototypical blue line that you would try to build, right?
It does.
I guess the only thing it's missing is like a truly, top 5 defenseman in the game, elite guy, but Vince Dunn's just the tiniest tier down from that. Otherwise, it feels just about perfect.
Right. No, I think it is perfect. I think it's the best look that they've had really in the Kraken's existence.
I think actually no question.
Right? So I think a lot of this is going to go really well for them on the back end. I think it just kind of works. And if there is a pairing where they just can't get on the same page, because so much of it is built to basically look and be the same, even down to the side of the ice that they're all playing on, RJ. just start swapping it around until you find three groupings that all work that do click, and they have that energy and everything, right? So I think yeah, they should be fine on the blue line. In net, Grubauer has looked really solid. He looks fresh. He looks ready to go, RJ, and so does Joey Decord.
Yeah, I mean, this is the most stability certainly in the crease that the Kraken have had going into a season ever. I mean, maybe year one you see, Grubauer and Drieger, but even then it was a lot of question marks there about, who plays what the roles are. I think we know exactly what this goalie tandem is going to look like. And yes, I know on just the pure stat sheet numbers, right? Grubauer had a rough night last night. We talked about this earlier in the podcast, but the issues were so much deeper than that. I know we've said this plenty of times in the past, but man, just watch the goals. Just watch the goals against. They're not on him.
He was really hung out to dry a couple times. Yeah, it was rougher. He'd make like one sequence, he made two great saves, and then it was just like, what, they're gonna get a third? You know what I mean? Like there's a third uncontested rebound. Like, yeah, okay, you know.
So I feel like we've gone through this drill with Grubauer already,
yes.
but
the trend continues. Defense doesn't ever look great in front of Grubauer for some reason.
Hey, the NHL defense did, at least.
Yes. Now let's just do a quick rundown of maybe like our favorite prospects from each kind of grouping. Just to kind of go through that.
Yes.
And, we'll start in net though. Let's keep it talking about goaltenders. It's been Nicholas Coco. Nicholas Coco has looked unreal at camp, both through rookie camp, and then he's elevated his game even for training camp with the Kraken. RJ, Nicholas Coco just looks, I mean, it's insane how solid he covers the lower half of the net. He's just so good.
Yeah, and I was not going to let you end this podcast before we talked about Nicholas Coco. I was going to make sure we talked about him because, yeah, he is the Kraken goalie prospect. And you know what? He might be ready for things sooner than we initially thought. I mean, he is, I would venture to say he's looked like the third best goalie at Kraken training camp. And that includes guys like Ales Stezka. Like Coco has been very impressive, and he's young, but I'd love to see him kind of get an opportunity this year to be able to go in at the AHL and kind of run with it. I think he's ready for that. At least it looks like it right now. Also, seems like a fun guy too. I wanted to include a few tidbits because I got the chance to talk with him the other day, and there was some interesting stuff that he was talking about. First of all, we got to talk about his pads.
Yeah,
his gear setup. This might be the best Kraken setup I've ever seen. I mean, it's just missing the mask, and he says that's coming very soon. But those pads with the tentacles on them, I mean, they're all over our social media. You can go find them if you haven't seen them already. But they look fantastic. Also, he loves to play the puck. This is something that heard rumors about. By the way, shout out to Semeli and Mikko Ahonen, our Finnish contacts in Lahti in Finland, who give us the information on this stuff. And it really helped to be able to have some of that information as background when talking with Nicholas Coco. But yes, they did tell me that he, I guess, tried to score a goal a couple times in Liga last season. And so I asked him, I said, I heard you tried to score a goal a couple times last season. Is that true? And he said 3 times. Actually, he corrected me, 3 times he tried to score a goal. He said he didn't get one, but he's not going to stop. Hopefully this season he'll score, he said. So looks like we might have a Finnish Joey Decord in the organization. We know how fun that is with Joey. Guess what? Nicholas Coco also likes to try and score goals. He also looked up to Pekka Rinne a lot growing up too, and Rinne, another big goaltender from Finland, and that's a great goalie, I think, to model your game after. So I love that being a goal for him. And also, he said that Rinne worked with him a little bit at the World Juniors, and that he's been like texting him back and forth, and he's kind of helping him with his game too. So that's another great mentor to have as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, growing up, Pekka Rinne, just incredible backbone of Nashville for a really long time, and really helped establish that franchise and everything. Like, just a great goaltender to model your game after, for sure. Yeah, just super. He's just looks so good. Like, there's just no other way of putting it. Like, he's looked absolutely fantastic. Like I said, he handles things down low really well. If you watched any of the rookie showcase game when he played against Colorado, you saw that. Like, it is just, you're not going to get anything past him down low. You and I have been talking. The corners, they are available. right? They are available over top on him, but in a game situation, it's hard to hit those, right? If you got a defense in front of you, it's hard to hit those. It's something you've been talking about. So at training camp. So, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. And in the game situation that we've seen from him, he's shut things down. Whether it was at the rookie showcase or even at the scrimmage at training camp with some NHLers on the ice, shut things down when he was out there. So I think, yeah, he's just looked really good.
Yeah, he has. And I'm glad. Where was I going to go with this? I completely lost my train of thought. I'm sorry on that.
Sorry.
I hope this is what it was. I hope he gets into a preseason game. I don't think that doesn't sound like the plan right now.
Yeah.
But I hope they reverse course and give him a preseason game, or at least part of it.
I do
give
too.
him one period.
I do too. On the blue line, RJ, has there been anybody that's really stood out to you, or any names that you want to kind of specifically mention?
Let's see. Okay, well, I won't talk about Viliotavainen some more because I've already said my piece on him. I mean, well, no, let's see. I mean, I'm curious though. Yeah, you go first. You go first. There's someone I want to ask you about, but go ahead.
Yeah. Tyson Jugnow really stood out to me kind of through everything, whether it was at the rookie showcase or even at training camp. He's looked like, of that group of the younger guys that are, CHL-ish guys, he's looked the most impressive, I feel like, right? Like Ty Nelson's doing his thing and he's impressive in the aspects of the game that Ty Nelson is impressive in, right? His slap shot's a bomb. He's just insanely rock solid and he's low to the ground. You just can't get past him. If he decides he's going to engage with you physically, that's it for you. Like you're just out of the play. But I feel like all around game, and most impressively for me, he has the same mentalities of the NHL defenseman Tyson Jugnow, where it's, if there's an odd man rush coming his way, he's not going to be passive about it. He's going to step up and he's going to use his stick and he's going to try to stop it as soon as he possibly can, right? And that's something that I noted the NHL defensemen were doing. The AHL guys maybe would do, but maybe a little bit later. And then a lot of the CHL guys would just kind of wait and let the offense make a move, and then they'd go and they'd handle something. Tyson Jugnow in defensive situations, very active stick, very much wants to use his stick and try to shut things down and get it going the other way just as fast as he possibly can. So that kind of felt like he was playing a little bit older than what he really was. And then when you watch him, the poise he has when he's operating in the offensive zone, especially in those rookie showcase games, he was just kind of taking things over and he's so patient with it. If he's got time and space, he's going to use it. He's going to make sure he finds the play he wants. I just think he's playing like a lot older of a player than what he actually has been out there. And that I think is really impressive. And I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how he develops, but he's somebody that's really kind of stood out to me from that group of younger guys.
Yeah, good observations there on Jugnow, especially the way he operates in the offensive zone. As you said, he can walk the blue line. He can kind of jump up and make plays. He really kind of has that green light, which I'm sure he has utilized quite a bit in juniors, right?
Yeah.
Being able to be that guy for his team. Okay, I did scroll down in my notes and I found who I wanted to talk about because I couldn't remember the name. But I can't believe I forgot it because he was really impressive. Alexis Bernier.
Mm-hmm.
So a draft pick of the Kraken just this summer. So he's still pretty young. But his body positioning, oh my gosh. You remember the set of drills that I'm referencing here, right? Where it was a one-on-one battle drill down low along the boards. And the way he was able to just body out players, much larger players. I'm talking Yanni Newman. I'm talking Julius Miettinen. I'm talking, Viliotavainen. He made him look silly down there in the corner just by positioning his body the right way. And he's so much smaller than these guys, but they cannot get around him. It's incredible to watch and to see that from a player as young as he is. That's the kind of thing you're hoping to see from maybe a 20-year-old who's looking to go pro and make that next jump. But for a player right out of the draft, I mean, I don't know that I've really seen that from a guy drafted as late as he was. And I mean, not that he was drafted super late, but still. And I know, right, his dad owns a large chicken farming company. You made a joke, right?
It's a chain.
Chicken in there.
It's a chain of like rotisserie chicken places in Quebec. He's like known as the Chicken King.
Exactly. And so I guess something about that chicken just making him really solid. I disagree
Lean
with
protein. Lean
yeah,
protein.
lean protein. Yeah, no, I disagree with Harbaugh on that. Don't eat chicken. This is a nervous bird. No, that's clearly nonsense looking at Alexi Bernier.
Yeah. Listed 6'1", 189. Looks about that. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, the way he was handling things physically was definitely an impressive sight to see, and it was fun too because you could tell that it was kind of giving energy to the other young guys too, of like, oh, like, we can do this actually when we're competing against these guys that are a couple years older than us. Up front, RJ. I mean, there's a couple names that I feel like we just have to talk about when we're
Mhm.
talking about the forward group. So let's go ahead and talk about Berkeley Catton. Got to see him in his first preseason game last night. I was talking about this with some other media members. Berkeley Catton, it very much feels like he dominated dev camp. He looked pretty good in rookie camp, and he's looked pretty average so far through training camp, right? And I don't think that it's like he's getting worse. It's just that as the level of competition around him has gone up, he's stayed the same, but it's just that like everybody else has kind of risen around him. But that's pretty normal for a guy who's 18, right? Like the fact that you look average amongst NHL veterans that are in some cases 10 years older than you, it's pretty decent actually. But I just think that I put down some notes because I was going to talk about him a lot in the on the prospect chat on Wednesday. But with Berkeley Cat, where is he? I have so many notes on so many guys here. Yikes. I put that he's clearly smart. The puck seems to follow him. Like how many times offensive, defensive zone, neutral zone, even RJ, right? Like Berkeley Catton's like always there. You're always noticing him in and around the puck because he's just that smart. Like he understands where the puck is going to be, and so he puts himself there. But he's just not kind of ready for the NHL, right? He needs to learn how to battle better. I don't know if you've noticed this, RJ, but whenever he has to go into a physical battle, whether it's he's protecting the puck or he's trying to get the puck from somebody else, it's all sticks. He does not use his body at all, and I know he's a small guy, but it's just kind of laughable sometimes watching him like trying to reach around somebody. Like it's like he's trying to keep as much space between his body and the other person's body as humanly possible while using his stick trying to get the puck from somebody. And I just want so bad just to be like, dude, just get up on the guy and then use your stick. But like kind of close that gap. You'll have more leverage. You can have more space to work with. But it is kind of funny. It's like he's worried about like catching cooties or something. He's just like afraid to touch anybody out there. And that's been the big thing. And I feel like if he's kind of gets more comfortable with that, both offensively and defensively, because he's so smart, because he knows where the play is going, he's going to look fantastic. It's just a matter of him kind of building that confidence around that aspect of his game. And I feel like that really right now is the thing that's holding him back and looking like somebody who's you're sitting there and you're going like, wow, as an 18-year-old, maybe this guy could crack the roster. As long as he kind of has that, hiccup to his game, it's going to be like, no, okay, go get stronger, go get better, go, get used to the speed, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that was the big question going into training camp is how is he going to look against NHL veterans and players who have been in the league for a long time? And now we have our answer. And yeah, he's not ready for the NHL right now. But you know what? Just about nobody from that
Yeah.
draft class is right
Why
now. I
would
mean,
he
you're going to
be?
have what, you know, two, maybe three players out of that draft class who are going to make it year one. That's just how it goes every year. And so for someone at the 8th overall pick, I mean, it's kind of an exceptional thing to be able to be ready for that spot, especially somebody just with his size and his build, right? And you see it in the battling, right? Where I'm sure if he was, 6'2" and had built some more weight there, yeah, he probably wouldn't be as hesitant to go to these battles with giant guys. Because I don't know that he's scared of catching cooties, but maybe just scared of getting into a physical
Getting
match with someone much bigger than
leveled.
you might break him. Yeah, exactly. Getting leveled. So I think that's probably what it is. So that's all stuff you can work on. That's all coachable stuff. But yeah, I don't think he's quite ready yet.
Yeah, or even when protecting the puck, right? Like I've talked, I think it was last week, him at the prospect showcase, how he likes to tuck the puck in kind of between his skates to help protect it. When they were doing one-on-one battles and he was the puck carrier, he was kind of doing that, right? Like he can play the puck at a high level with it really close to his body, which is a very difficult thing to do. Like that's an exceptional thing that he can do. But he was so kind of bad at keeping the other person off of him that it didn't really buy him that much more time. You know what I mean? Whereas if he had just kind of, taken an arm or even just thrown out his elbow a little bit, right? Because he's playing in, so he's got everything really tucked in close to his chest. I'm trying to get this like on the video, right? But if he had just kind of leveraged out, like take that elbow out and just give yourself that extra, foot, it would have made a huge difference for him when he was trying to protect the puck in those one-on-one drills. And I think that's the stuff that, it'll just take a little bit of time to learn. And, while he's in major junior, is that going to be the top priority for him to learn? Probably not, because at that level, he's just way better than most guys out there. So he doesn't need to. But as he continues his development and works towards being a member of the Kraken full time, those are going to be the lessons that he's going to need to learn, similar to Jagger Firkus, who we can kind of transition over and talk about too, who I really feel like, RJ, this is the first time where I'm seeing the potential of a pro player in Jagger Firkus, just because he has, and I talked about this a little bit last week, but it's been the case through training camp, and it was the case last night against a big Calgary Flames team. He can take contact now and not end up on the ice, right? He can take contact and he bounces off of it, and yeah, sometimes it throws him off from what he's trying to do, but I've been saying it all along. I'll buy Jagger Firkus as a pro player when I can see him take a hit and not end up on his butt. We're at that level. We're at that point. So obviously, I don't know how much bigger and stronger he really is, RJ. We've been seeing him walk around. He's still small, but he has definitely at least learned how to handle absorbing contact and staying on his feet and staying a part of a play where he just kind of wasn't able to against men before.
Right. And it's improvement, and it's a very important improvement that we're seeing here. And we saw it multiple times in the game. I know both of us kind of focused in on him during a lot of his shifts to see how he would handle that contact. And the answer, at least in that situation, was good enough. Like it did throw him off from things he was trying to do. There were times where he was trying to hang on to the puck and eventually did give it up, but he was able to hang on to it for long enough to kind of get guys in the zone or open up a passing option where he was able to do that. And so it's an improvement for him. And yeah, is it good enough at this point to be an NHL player and hang in the NHL? No, it's not, but it doesn't have to be yet. Is it good enough to be a pro and go to the AHL? Yeah, you know what? I think it could be, at least, for this year, and it can only get better. So it's good to see that improvement, because you're right. This is the first time we've seen that from him. Over the last couple years prior to this training camp, we really haven't. And so it's something we needed to see, and we're starting to see it.
Yeah, so that's been really fun to watch. Any other forwards you want to talk about kind of here? Anybody else from the younger group that you want to mention?
Nobody really. I mean, those were the two really that I was thinking we're talking about. I mean, Villeneuve would have been the other one, but we talked about him earlier on the podcast. Yeah. Anybody else for you?
No, I mean, I'll talk about all of them on the prospect chat, but like those, I feel like they're the ones that the most people at training camp come up and ask us about, feels like. So I want to get that out here on the deep dive. So otherwise, we've been going on for an hour and a half. This episode's long enough. I think we can kind of wrap it up. Want to remind everybody that, again, tomorrow on Patreon is our live game commentary for that next preseason game. So, the questions around how's Chandler Stevenson going to look in a game, or Brandon Montour, all that kind of stuff there, that's going to get answered for the first time tomorrow. And we can watch it all together live and have a good time doing that over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey. Prospect chat the next night, Wednesday night. Looking forward to that, where I'll go through all the prospects, talk about all of them. And then also want to remind everybody that you've got until Thursday to enter in to win those tickets from Queen Anne Beer Hall to go to that next Kraken preseason game in Climate Pledge Arena, which is going to be on Friday, but the contest will close on Thursday, and that tweet is already live. If you go to our Twitter account at Emerald City HKY, you can, follow Queen Anne Beer Hall and retweet our contest tweet, and that'll get you into the contest.
That's all it takes. And you should be following Queen Anne Beer Hall anyway. Entering the podcast, you just follow Queen Anne Beer Hall anyway. Give it a retweet, and you got some chances to go to the game. And also, you can lord that over Dylan, because he won't be able to go to that one. He's going to have to miss that game. So you can go to the game that Dylan can't even go to.
Right, and then you can join RJ on a podcast, and you can tell me how it went and everything that happened, maybe, right? That'd be good. I'm gonna need the recap. So all right, everybody, thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.
Hey everyone, before we go, we just wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our awesome patrons over at patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey, especially our Terror of the Deep patrons.
Thank you so much for making all this possible. We really appreciate your support.